Hello and welcome to Drive the Bid, which is our automotive videocast podcast brought to you by AutoHunter.com, which is an online auction with collector cars going live every single weekday. So if you're interested in buying or selling your collector car, be sure to check out AutoHunter.com. I am Jeff Sutton, and as always, I'm joined by Shiekhi on the left and Diego Rosenberg on the right. And today we're going to be talking about news, and our main topic will actually be a sort of Father's Day special, and then we'll also highlight some of the cars that are currently live on AutoHunter.com. But as always, we do have a sponsor, so today's episode of Drive the Bid is brought to you by LandAirSea. Keep tabs on all your valuable assets from the palm of your hand. Remember, with LandAirSea, theft is temporary. Visit LandAirSea.com to order your LandAirSea GPS unit for your classic vehicle. And so this is an example of the GPS, and we'll go ahead and put it on our Camaro on the corner to keep it protected as always.
Yeah, let's be careful with that. My dad loaned me that car, so I can't get a scratch on it.
Right. Well, at least you don't have to worry about getting stolen.
That's right.
All right. So we have the first bit of news.
Yes. So McQueen Racing and Steeda Performance Vehicles have announced they have a new series of vehicles coming out. It's going to be based on the 2024 Mustang, so the next generation that came out already. And they're vague at this point. So they say in their press release, the limited edition series beginning with the 2024 Mustang will provide race enthusiasts with an unparalleled driving experience and unique equipment upgrades, all at competitive prices. So we don't know exactly what model it'll be based on, but what we do know is it'll have Steeda suspension, brake, and powertrain components. Of course, there will be exterior and interior changes, and McQueen Racing Mulholland wheels with Nitto tires. They say supercharged and naturally aspirated variants will be available. To me, it makes sense. This is actually one of their previous models. This was the obviously their version of the Bullet, so they amped this up. This was a $26,000 package that could be added to the outgoing S550 Bullet that was made for 2019 and 2020. So they gave it a 550 horsepower tune, suspension upgrades, the McQueen Racing Mulholland wheels right there, the 5 spokes, and then some interior touches as well. As for these future cars, to me, it makes sense if they would base them off of the Dark Horse, because there's already a lot of performance enhancements baked into that. So it's got a 500 horsepower version of the Coyote V8. It's got suspension and chassis enhancements. And then you can also get the Dark Horse S, which is for weekend track enthusiasts. And then you can get the Dark Horse R, which is made specifically for racing. And you've got, upgrades that come with that, like, roll cage, quick disconnect steering wheel, electrical disconnects, all that kind of stuff. So that would make the most sense as the basis for these cars.
Yeah, so did I hear you say that these wheels are going to be on whatever they decide to do for the S650, the McQueen wheels?
Yes, yeah. And then they also have a partnership with Nitto. So they'll be the Mulholland wheels from McQueen Racing with Nitto tires.
I wonder how that's going to look, because the S650 has I would say, a much different styling from previous Mustangs. It seems like it's more of a departure from the traditional Mustang shape.
Yeah, especially the front end, it's got that kind of blockiness, and then it's got that real pronounced crease in the back.
But I mean, they probably already know what they're doing, I would imagine, because I believe the S650 has kind of been available for people to start fitting their parts already for a while now, right? I think we've seen plenty of videos and photos of cars that are already at specialty aftermarket manufacturers to build parts for the new Mustangs.
Well, speaking of that, the timing, so they will arrive in their dealer network later this summer. So they are coming. But yeah, we haven't reached their official debut yet. And as you can see, the Dark Horse, it's available with carbon fiber wheels.
That can't be cheap. Does that mean a Dark Horse could be like as much as like $80K?
They almost look fake.
But I mean, there's so many different types of carbon. Some manufacturers just paint it because they don't prepare it in a way that is aesthetically pleasing and like a, form-fitting weave, and then some leave it exposed, and there's also forged carbon, and there's different types of weave, and so it's tough to know exactly what they're going to do. Because I feel like I've seen a few dark horses now, I guess, in person. I don't think we've ever seen any with the carbon packages, though. I don't think. That spoiler, I think, has been on all of them, but the wheels I certainly haven't seen in person yet.
Oh, okay. And yeah, that's another thing about the dark horses. You can get it with a handling package, so it makes it even more aggressive, even more of a performer. So yeah, that I would imagine they'll go with that because they specifically mention race enthusiasts. So I don't imagine they would, start with like an EcoBoost model.
Right.
Might as well just go to the top.
Yeah, I guess we'll have to wait and see.
Yeah, but I'll be interested to see what it looks like because their version of the last Bullet just looks fantastic.
For $26,000, though, I can imagine just getting another Mustang.
Oh, you could do that, yeah. Yeah, and of course that was in addition to the donor vehicle. You had to send them the Bullet so that they could put the package on it. But yeah, I mean, they only made, according to their official press materials, they only made 300 a year of those. And I'm assuming they made it 2019, 2020.
Now, do we know that they made 300 or that was just their goal?
Yeah, that's why I said that. I mean, I don't know what their total production ended up being, but that's what they said it was going to be.
Yeah, it's funny how often that changes, right? Planned production of 1,000 or whatever. How many did you actually build? Well, 805. Oh, okay. All right. So here is my bit of news. Go ahead and ignore that Aston behind it there. The main focus is that a company has sustainable fuel on sale. So it's a British fuel company called Corriton. Hopefully I'm pronouncing that correctly, which has listed their sustainable fuel called Sustain Classic, which is what you see in the photo there. And they have 3 different grades. So 2 of which both come out to 94 octane and just have a slightly different blend of what all sustainable materials are kind of in there. And then there's a third which comes out to 98 octane. And so these fuels are fine to be used for racing or track days, but the key is they contain less than 1% of ethanol, which makes them better for old cars, hence the kind of classic sustain method. But the real problem is that it's not very cheap. The prices kind of vary from $18 to $25 a gallon.
So just a little more expensive than gas is right now.
A little bit, yeah.
That's what it is in California.
Oof.
This is honestly, it's exciting to see the biofuel stuff come out personally, because that's like, to me, that's the, light at the end of the tunnel. Like, oh, hey, look, there are going to be other solutions in the future. We're already figuring it out. I know Porsche's working on it. There's some racing series that I think only use biofuel and stuff like that currently. And then there's some other people that are all working on it. I think there's a company here in the US out of Texas that's working on it as well that pretty much has a solution already, but it's not cheap, just like this isn't. But I was worried that, in the future, it's going to be like, oh, only, the rich can afford to run their gas cars on race days of the weekends, and the rest of us will be driving whatever normal mundane cars.
EVs?
Maybe. If that's what happens, but I'd like to think that maybe as production increases, right, if they get a larger volume of demand for this type of stuff, maybe the price will go down at that point.
Well, and as the
producing
technology
large enough qualities, or as the technology improves, or we find a better alternative biofuel. But it's cool that it's on sale, because it seems like we've been hearing a lot about so-and-so is working on it, or so-and-so thinks they have it, but like to see actually one come on sale, aside from them kind of being limited to racing series, this is pretty cool.
So the sustainable part, I mean, is there fossil fuels in it?
Mm-mm.
Oh, okay, so it's completely not dependent on that. It's made with something completely different.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
But it still has, like I said, less than 1% ethanol. So it still has a little bit of ethanol, which I found kind of funny that they couldn't get rid of all of it per se to still make it.
Yeah,
right, in a sense. Yeah, I don't know. But I mean, obviously less than 1% is great. If you've ever had all original older car, you know that there's lots of things that can happen, whether the fuel boils early in the carburetor, et cetera. That kind of happens with older cars, with new gas, for how different it is. But if you have a new car, obviously it's not really a problem. But
it looks like you can buy it at Safeway.
Yeah, well, I mean, the article didn't really specify if you could get it in the U.S., but that's the U.S. pricing is $18 to $25. It was mostly in British pounds, which is obviously being a British company. I would assume it's more readily available overseas than our friends across the pond. So
I can envision a pipeline in our future.
yeah, right next to the what is it, transatlantic cable.
Okay, so this is the Buick Envision, which I don't know if you remember.
I can't envision it. No.
Okay. This was the first Chinese car, or let's say Chinese-built car sold in the U.S. I think that was 2016, if I'm correct. This is what the facelift is going to look like for 2024. But the news is that GM's Super Cruise, is going to be available on this car. This is the first Buick to have Super Cruise. Interestingly enough, it has appeared in Chevrolets and GMCs, but not Buick until now for 2024.
And I see they've got the new Buick logo too.
The crest, yeah, it looks, let's say, artistically rendered.
I like the way that steering wheel looks.
Looks like the Mazda 3.
But doesn't that kind of look like a screen in the top of the steering wheel? Like, doesn't that kind of look like some sort of touch bar? Or like, it almost looks like where they put shift lights in race cars. But
yeah, for the Super Cruise to tell you that it's active.
Oh, is that what it is?
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, I was.
This looks like a Ford Escape.
For Buick owners.
This looks like a Ford Escape.
Yeah, it doesn't. I mean, the profile looks like GM, but and Buick in particular. But the front end, yeah, I couldn't really tell what it was at first.
This is what I'll tell you. The previous one, the one they have right now, I think looks good in the front. The facelift they did a few years ago looks really good. This looks like the show car they came out with a few years ago. It may have been the Wildcat. I can't remember for sure, but it kind of had that lower grille type of styling. So this is something that's new for what's out in the street, and we're going to see it. Also, the Encore, I think the new 2024 Encore has the same front end, and it remains to be seen if the Enclave will have the same.
Yeah, I don't like that. I don't know who made that styling choice, because obviously Aston's had that style of grille forever. Then Ford kind of adapted the semi-inverse when they bought Aston.
50s, and then GM put it on the 55 Chevy. So it's like, but if you look,
like I said, I think it looks like a current Escape. You could put this on a Ford lot, and I would not notice it was a Buick.
It doesn't, but I understand why you say that. But if you see the actual show car from a few years ago, it all makes sense. Anyway, Super Cruise 2024. Be there, be square.
All right. With that, we will move on to our Father's Day main core topic section, in which case we will pay a little bit of homage, I guess, to how we have any interesting stories about cars and our fathers, and celebrate that with Father's Day being this upcoming Sunday. So let's get into it.
Okay, so yeah, like a lot of people, I got started. My love for cars was nurtured by my dad. You know, when I was a little kid, I remember going with him to buy like first generation Mustang convertibles and late 40s to mid 50s GM trucks, and I always had like Majorette and Hot Wheels and Matchbox cars. My mom certainly contributed to it as well. And then when I was a teenager, I was going with my dad to a yard sale, and he just kept it going because he ended up getting me a Maisto 1/18 scale Lamborghini Diablo, $1. And that, it just went from there. He'd always get me 2 for my birthday and each Christmas. And then I started buying my own once I got older and all that kind of stuff. And I realize how much of my automotive tastes comes from him because, he bought a lot of old American cars, as would-be projects, to fix up. And that just showed me like how attractive, visually attractive American cars are, old, especially the old ones. But he primarily drove Japanese cars, so I definitely learned the reliability and durability of Japanese cars from, the cars that he owned, and my mom had, and all that kind of stuff. But he primarily drove Japanese cars, so I definitely learned the reliability and durability of Japanese cars from, the cars that he owned, and my mom had, and all that kind of stuff. But he primarily drove Japanese cars, so I definitely learned the reliability and durability of Japanese cars from, the cars that he owned, and my mom had, and all that kind of stuff. but also, I realized like how much he rubbed off on me, like especially those early experiences, because even though he never drove the Mustangs that he got, I realized like, oh, that's where it started for me, because I drive a retro styled Mustang right now. And at one point, briefly, he had an XJ Cherokee, and one vehicle that I've wanted for a while is an off-roader, but in particular, an XJ Cherokee. And he had his own ways of like, I mean, it sounds kind of cliched, but it's true. Like, I wouldn't be here right now if it wasn't for him. Not only, creating that love for cars in me, but also, he had his own ways of supporting me. When I was reviewing press cars, he would find ways to like, I would tell him like, hey, I need to find a way to like test this Power Stroke F250, and he's like, well, he's always doing home improvement projects. He's like, well, I need to get road base to lay in the driveway, to instead of grass, can park on road base. So we went to the quarry. We got, I guess, over a ton of road base, had it dropped into the back and everything, and just hauled it.
Feel that.
Yeah. And, and then what was it? There was something else. Oh, yeah, like needed to haul some like old tires and stuff away. I had an F450 dually. So he's like, oh, well, I got this stuff that we can haul to the recycling center and all that kind of stuff. So he had his own ways of like, helping me out with that. And then, I got to give a shout out to my father-in-law, Hugo, as well. He's told me about all the cars he's owned over the years, and one of them was 78 Trans Am. Unfortunately, this got stolen. Rest in peace. But he's told me about all the cars he's had over the years, and I realized like my dad was pretty brand loyal after a certain point. Like he stuck with Toyotas, like 4Runners, Cressidas, Japanese cars in general. But my father-in-law, Hugo, has been, from everything that he's told me, has been completely brand agnostic. He's had a Trans Am, F-150, Chevy Tahoe, Chrysler 300C. And I'm like, I get like sticking with a brand because you develop a greater depth of knowledge. But when you have a breadth of experiences, it's like, oh, you can try a little bit of everything over the years.
Cherry pick.
Yeah, exactly. So, that's I've learned a lot, and certainly learned to enjoy a lot of different facets of the automotive world, thanks to my dad and my father-in-law.
Yeah, it's a real shame about the Firebird. As someone that wants one.
Yeah, that had to be a bummer. But it was actually gold too. And this is one of the cars carried on ClassicCars.com.
I think it bears mentioning also that your dad is an immigrant, so that for an immigrant from a faraway place who was collecting old American pickup trucks and first-generation Mustangs, I think that shows something that he recognized after moving here.
Yeah, I'm sure. And I remember him telling me, because he came over before the Iranian Revolution, and he told me at one point, like, oh, yeah, I saw Goldfinger in the theaters. And I'm wondering, I got to ask him this, I'm wondering if seeing that and seeing the Mustang convertible in that movie had, a formative effect on his interest in cars, because one of the Mustangs he bought was a 65 white convertible.
Are you sure it wasn't the Aston Martin?
No.
It'd be a totally different life had you bought a DB5 and just held on to it.
Yeah. But yeah, as far as I know, he still has that car. I mean, it definitely needs to be fixed up, but I mean, yeah, it's a white, red interior, air conditioning, white top, just needs some TLC.
Is it a V8 car or is it
289? So yeah, maybe one of these days.
Yeah, that's a pretty sweet car.
Yeah, it would be nice, like, if I've always, daydreamed like, oh yeah, it'd be cool to like fix that up with him, but he's lives in a completely different state, so
yeah, that makes it a little bit harder.
Yeah, just a smidge.
But that's a pretty cool backstory. All right.
Okay, so my dad, who is not
Not the
Dan
guy
Gurney,
He's not?
No.
Bummer.
My dad is not a car guy, but when I was born, he had a 67 or 68 Cougar. I am not really sure which. I do remember the car, but when I was 2, it was in an accident and totaled. So, but that may have started my trajectory with automobiles. I do remember going to a few car shows as a kid. I'm going to guess I was 8. I don't know for sure. I remember seeing a 57 Chevy, a 54 Chevy, a 59 Cadillac, a 59 Edsel, and some Thunderbirds in one of the shows. And the other show, I remember like a 1906 Cadillac, a 58 Cadillac limousine, and a 67 GTO. Of course, at the time, I think the fins were most interesting to me. As I got older, I asked him to take me to Carlisle, and that was a 3-hour drive. So he took me there, which was great. He took me to my first drag race because I asked him to take me to Cecil County Raceway. And then I went to the Muscle Car Nationals in Atco both days. So that was cool, my dad. And then eventually I could go on these outings on my own as I got my license. But my parents, my dad and my mom, definitely engendered, if I'm using the word right, my automotive enthusiasm. I got a few books as a kid, and then it would be like, what do you want for the holidays? And it'd be like, oh, this book at Wanamaker's. And, it's just car books and stuff. So, my dad didn't really have any cool cars. I mean, maybe like his regular cars were cool in their own way. Like he had a Mark IV and an Eldorado Touring Coupe, the first 82s. Some stuff like that, but otherwise, it was just going to the car dealerships when the new models are out, test driving a Citroen when they started to be gray marketed in Philadelphia. I think CX Auto was the name of the company. I don't really think that he was truly interested in one of them, but maybe he was. But it always was the same thing. It's like, who's going to fix a Citroen?
Don't you have an affinity for Citroens?
Well, that's the reason why we took a look at one. I begged him. And, Philly was half an hour away. So
you're like, I want to see the weird in person.
well, they had it at the Philadelphia Auto Show, which, it's not like the New York Auto Show. It's run by the Dealer Association, which is probably the same way here. But they had the gentleman who was gray marketing them. I want to say his last name was Stout. My dad talked with him when we got the business card, and one time we went back to test drive the car. And, it was definitely the kind of car that my dad would have liked. But I can't really tell you how serious he was. I don't think he was like humoring me. But in the end, it's just like, who's going to fix a Citroen?
Yeah, maybe. I wonder what the gray market profit margins were on Citroens. Because I know that it was tens of thousands of dollars in some Mercedes. But I'm just curious. I wonder what the how much you could save by purchasing a Citroen through the gray market instead.
Well, I mean, they didn't import it here. So, I mean, you can't really say how much you can save, but maybe what would be the additional cost? Would it be reasonable? Would it be competitive in the marketplace? I don't know. I think at the same dealership, they also sold Alphas, if that makes any sense.
No, it doesn't. It doesn't make any sense.
I think it makes sense because they're kind of both quirky cars their own way. The thing is that the Alphas were officially being sold here.
Yeah, they were generally considered beautiful sports cars, and then they were parked next to the weird Citroens.
It was the Milano. I think it had power windows up here.
Yeah. Still an Italian car. We just tend to look at them as quirky cars with personality, especially in the Alpha's case.
Yes, breaking down randomly. That's a quirk.
Well, they don't always break down, but when the check light, the check engine light comes on randomly while you're driving, sometimes you just need to drive over a speed bump a little extra hard, and then that goes back off.
Is there a light for check rust?
Yeah, it depends on the car. They should have stuff like that, especially a lot of the earlier Japanese cars where they just did not think about that. Those cars are particularly bad. All right. So for my dad, it kind of started with this. I remember before I could technically drive, this was I guess technically the car that I was driven. My mom was driven to the hospital in, and this was the truck that I was driving before I was 16. Here you go. I hated this truck. As I got older, it actually started driving. I hated this truck.
They're so good looking.
No, this had the 302 in it. It was an extended cab with this paint job. I hated this truck. You could not move in a parking lot to save its life. It had the maneuverability of a cargo ship. Actually, a cargo ship might be more maneuverable. They probably have side jets. Take that back. Less maneuverable than a cargo ship. Yeah, not great. But I look back at it with fondness in the sense of being one of the first vehicles that I had ever driven. And, that's sort of like your dad works the pedals while you steer the vehicle down the dirt lot to the house. And so obviously I remember those experiences, but really he had a variety of British and American cars. Was part of even though growing up in the middle of nowhere, you didn't really see much. There was occasionally super small car shows, where 20, maybe 30 cars would show up of varying degrees, nothing crazy. Living in the middle of nowhere in California, we would drive out to Willow Springs to watch some of the vintage racing stuff, which usually tended to be mostly British and American cars that you would see out there running. And I remember seeing how massive the Corvettes looked next to the tiny MGs that would be racing, even though they're about keeping pace with each other. I remember even Volvo P1800s that were blisteringly fast for no reason, had no right to be the fastest car out there, but just were. Obviously, they're a bit hopped up, but these were some of the things that got me into cars early on, and even somehow along the way ended up having an affinity for Ferraris, despite never really seeing any Ferraris growing up. But he has a 1973 Chevrolet Corvette. And I think this is what really solidified a lot of stuff for me. This car did go to some of the small town car shows, in the town at the time. Then it ran into some issues and wasn't really driving so much. But I remember, fixing this car one time, spending a winter break in the garage fixing the fuel lines, and the smell of and feeling of super ice cold gas in the middle of winter, because in the desert, it turns out it actually gets really cold there. For those of you that don't know, it's not hot all the time. And repairing that car and getting it so it was then running and driving again. And this was also the car that I started to learn manual on as well. And having my dad grill me for doing a burnout and letting off the clutch a little bit too fast after a little bit too much gas on it. So this car has a very emotional attachment to me, despite being, it's a 73, so it still has the good looking rear end. It just doesn't have the chrome bumpers in the front. So I think it's still a fantastic looking car in Ontario orange, especially.
Zora's favorite year, if I'm correct.
Really?
Yeah.
What did he see? Did he say specifically why?
My guess is that probably he wanted to have the body colored front end originally, and it wasn't possible for 1968. Maybe, I'm not sure. Can't say I'm a Corvette expert.
I was going to say values would say the chrome cars tend to be worth more, but very pretty car. And like I said, this is basically the exact spec that my dad's car is, and the T-tops are a fantastic experience too, just as far as getting into that Corvette experience. So super emotionally attached to this car.
So your dad's is that same color right there?
Yeah, it's like the Ontario orange.
Is that the actual car?
No, unfortunately, this isn't the actual car. His has gone through some rough stints. It's been repainted partially, and it wasn't done well because it was backed into by a Volkswagen bus.
Were you driving the bus?
No, my dad's brother was driving it. Yep. So,
and you just threw him under the bus right now.
Yeah, right. That car's still around. It still drives to this day now, ever since the fix. But I think that really solidified for me, those types of working with my dad. That was my first experience, I guess, spending a lot of time working on the car.
Yeah.
With my dad like that. And so we were both going back and forth to figure out how we wanted to fix the car. And that by that point in my life, I'd figured out a lot more knowledge wise as far as how to repair cars. And so it was kind of able to go back and forth more, as opposed to when I was younger and he was teaching me how to work on cars. I remember essentially he would he'd usually pick up the part, mostly maintenance items, oil changes, or replacing serpentine belts or whatever. And I remember he would like hand me like the serpentine belt and basically be like, go out and replace the belt on the car. If you can't figure it out in half an hour or whatever, I'll come out and help you. And we didn't really have much in the way of internet. We had dial-up internet, which means if you're not familiar, only one person can be on it at a time, and you can't use the phones if somebody's on the internet.
I remember those days.
Yeah, not great, but didn't have much choices growing up in a small town in the middle of nowhere on a dirt road. But I remember that's how I started learning cars. And I remember one of them was a Toyota Highlander. And it turns out to replace the belt in that car, to get to the tensioner, you actually have to take off the passenger front wheel. And there's an access panel to then get to the tensioner, to then let everything off, which was one of those, trying to learn about cars. And then there's this overly complicated process just to get to the tensioner. Obviously, it took me a little bit longer to figure out how to do that one. But then that turned into being home from schools during summers in high school, and you would just leave all the stuff to do oil changes or whatever and be like, hey, have this done by the time we get back home from work, type of stuff. So I look back at that for all of my, I guess, automotive knowledge and stuff, and kind of propelling me to even work on my own cars going forward. And then this is a 1968 Pontiac Le Mans, which he also has. His used to be essentially the same color, but with a black vinyl top. It's not currently running and driving, but this was a car that I think I took my senior photos with this car.
Does your dad have the GTO hood?
No, he doesn't have the GTO hood. His is all, I guess, well, mostly original. It has I believe, an Olds engine in it, which is kind of funny because Pontiac runs the fuel lines through the driver's side of the car, and Pontiac has the fuel pump on that side, so it makes sense. But when you put in a different manufacturer's engine, they usually put the fuel pump on the passenger side, so now you have to awkwardly run the fuel lines around of the car. But we'll see what happens to this car. Like I said, it's currently not running. It needs a lot of help. It's got the gas tank dropped out of it now and some other stuff going through it. But this is one of the other cars that I remember him having. He's also had currently has a Triumph TR7. He had a Bug-Eye Sprite. I remember when that one was sold, a little sad on the inside. But even doing British car rallies in my small hometown, all sorts of little random car bits that somehow, greatly he wasn't a single brand fan either. That has since turned into, I guess, learning more, and even talking to his brother about different cars that his brother had, and then some of the stuff that my dad has that he doesn't have anymore, has really, I guess, rubbed off on me, obviously. And now I get to share some of the stuff that I've learned and some of the experiences I get to have with my dad now, which is kind of like a full circle, type of thing. When you look how your dad rubs off on you and gives you the stuff that you're into now. And now I get to share some of what I've learned with him and that type of stuff. So pretty sentimental. I'm going to try not to tear up in this episode.
Don't want to short out your mic.
Yeah. All right, so with that's a little bit of insight, I guess, and how our some car stories with our dads and how they may have jumped us into the automotive world. But now it's time to highlight some of the cars which are currently live on AutoHunter.com. So, first car.
So that's me. I think this one was a 2017. So when I was researching this, okay, first off, when these cars came out, I did not like them. I really hated that blade in a different color. I thought it was...
This is just the family size Audi TT, right?
This is the Audi R8. I think technically this is a 2017 R8 V10 Pro
Plus with the lowercase p.
The TRD Pro I've been working on.
Yeah.
So yes, the Plus. So when these came out in 2006, I did not like them. I know eventually you could get a body color blade, which I think made it look much better. In any case, if you're not into these cars, you may not know there's actually two generations of them. It came out in 2016, if I'm correct. So there's the regular one, which has 540, but this is a Plus, so it has 610 horsepower.
You're talking about two generations of the updated cars? Because technically, I think the first one came out like 2008 or something.
2006 is the first year,
2006.
and 2016 is the second generation. Now, Have they had a facelift since then? Yes, they have. After 2017. All I'm saying is that I think the second generation is much nicer. Even the blade doesn't bother me so much anymore.
Yeah, the R8's a cool car. If you think about it, it also kind of, they have one of those Bronco golf cart things in the background from like the 90s. Sorry, getting distracted. Anyway, the R8's a really cool car because even the early R8s, I remember, were being featured almost as like spaceships and like iRobot and some other instances. It was very much considered a like futuristic styling car. You know, it was featured in Iron Man, like all sorts of cool stuff. I don't know whether that just means Audi just had a very large
They just had
marketing budget. Yeah. For where they were putting their cars, but they're really cool. I've always liked the R8s. I think they're, because of their reasonable price for a supercar, I think they're pretty good bang for buck as well. When you start to get into that realm, you know, these are cheaper than Ferraris, Lamborghinis, all that type of stuff, but we'll generally keep up with a lot of them for the most part. Really cool cars. I'm not a fan of the convertibles, so this is being a hardtop is the one to get. The convertibles have this weird humpback nature to them that
I mean, is it like a tonneau cover?
No, it's just the engine cover. Because of the way they do the engine cover, it just sticks out and looks no bueno to me, because it's like, you know, you look at the shape. Let's go back to the side profile. So here's the shape of an R8, right? So the real problem stems from when you have the convertible, it stops here for the windshield, right? And then this part's gone, but then they don't keep it like this to make it look like a Targa or anything cool. So they kind of like, they have to bulge it because the engine's like here. So they have to like bulge it up, and then it comes back down before it gets to like the passenger compartment. So you have like sleek, cool Audi R8 convertible, roofline ends here, flat, hump. Yeah, I can't stand it.
I will tell you that these cars are a lot rarer than what I thought. With Derek, I was looking up the numbers, and in the U.S., I think every year they sold less than 1,000, except for 1 year, which is I was expecting like 3,000 per year.
Something, yeah. I was too. I didn't realize they brought so few of them here.
Well, I feel like part of that is the people that have the money to buy supercars will generally look for a Ferrari or a Lamborghini or a McLaren. And so they spend a little bit more money than these. And then, but these are still just that much out of the regular person's price range that these aren't necessarily getting purchased there either. Those people are buying Corvettes when they want their bang for buck car. But with the price of Corvettes going up so significantly, who knows? Maybe we'll see a shift. But it depends on how long Audi decides to keep this thing in production.
Oh, yeah. Well, and you were telling me the other day, Diego, they don't even make a V8 version of this.
No, they're all V10s. I think probably since the second generation, maybe, if not before.
I think when this body style first came out, there was a V8 version.
What do you mean this body style? You mean the second
gen? Yeah, I believe there may have been a V8.
I don't believe it if there was.
I mean, like, I only learned about these a day or two ago. You know, I just happened to write this for an AutoHunter Spotlight.
It is a cool color, though, and the stitching on the inside is a nice accent. Quilted stitching.
And what's great about these is they're such a nice in-between, because obviously it's mid-engined, it's exotic, it's European, it's high-end. So it does stand out in that way. It has a certain visual gravity to it, but it's not as flashy as a Lamborghini. You know, which I like. It's tempered in that way.
It's like the thinking man's supercar.
It's an Audi.
Well, see, I agree, but I disagree. Like the fact that they just call it an R8 and don't really make it like stand out necessarily as crazy.
What do you mean stand out? It looks.
But like the name isn't like anything crazy. It's almost like Audi was just like, yeah, just call it a R8 or whatever. That's
V10 Plus.
They could have called it A9 or something like that.
Well, you know what I'm saying? It just kind of blends in. You're like, oh yeah, I was kind of thinking if I really want to get the S7 or maybe an R8, I don't know how I want to do that. And it's just like Audi speak. It's not like, oh, I'm thinking about getting the Audi blah, 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 insert Audi supercar name. That sounds exotic and fancy.
Yeah, like that concept they had, I think, in the early 2000s, New Volare.
Yeah, if they named it something like that, I'd be like, ooh. I will say that the styling looks fantastic. It's a very attractive car.
Oh, yeah.
The aggressive styling of the updated gen, but still reflects the first gen.
Yeah, exactly. You can definitely see the resemblance between the two, but this is a little more angular, but it's not a total radical departure from the first one.
Yeah, and if I'm not mistaken, this is the same engine that's in the Huracan, right? This is a 5.2 liter V10.
Imagine, yeah.
And the other thing about this is there are tons of twin turbo kits. I've seen quite a few twin turbocharged Audi R8s.
Yeah, what's that one company that does them a lot? They do them on Lamborghinis
Are
too.
you thinking of the sheep one?
No, not there's some company that does it.
There's Sheepy Race. There's like Underground.
Yeah, Underground. Yeah, that's the
Something
one.
like that.
Yeah, well, Underground Racing, I think.
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah.
There's a couple of them that do it. Anyways, from supercars to another supercar, just slightly older.
Yeah. So this is my AutoHunter pick. This is a 94, I want to say.
No, this is a BMW.
91, I think.
91, yeah. This is a 91 BMW 850i. So 850 meaning it has a V12. It's a 5-liter, so it made, when it was new, 296 horsepower. That's paired with a 4-speed automatic. And then this particular one comes in a really interesting, distinctive color, Lagoon Green Metallic. And yeah, I mean, just the whole car, just the styling and everything stands out as well because it's a pillarless coupe. You've got these unusual taillights, and then you've got the pop-up headlights. Just great looking car. And this is low miles too. So this is only 39,000 miles. It's been with the current owner for 12 years. So, it hasn't been hopping around over the last decade and change. And inside you've got, the expected luxuries for the period. You've got leather seats, dual zone climate control, AM, FM cassette. But this also, in addition to all those and the power windows and locks and mirrors, has a period cell phone.
I had a car with one of those.
Yeah. So, very nostalgic, great color, and just, I mean, they've made 2 generations of the 8 series, but these in particular, just they just stand out. I mean, I can't think of the last time I've seen one of these on the road.
If you go, there's one that's actually, it might even be this color, I think, that's been going to some of the shows locally. I don't think it looks as nice as this one. This one looks immaculate. I also love that the front nose kind of reminds me of the M1.
M1,
yeah.
Oh yeah, it's got the very small twin kidney grille.
Yes, I like the way they did that. It just seems so understated. When you see this car, you're like, oh, it's BMW. It's kind of sporty looking, and then you realize, oh, it's got a V12.
Yeah. And what's crazy about these, I mean, now this has got the automatic, but you could get the 850 CSI. So it was a pillarless coupe, grand touring car with a hopped up V12 and a 6-speed stick. I mean, just such an unusual combination.
Cool car, though. If you guys had a car with the phone, because you can't even get service for those things anymore, even if you wanted to, right? If you had all the money and wanted to try, I don't think anybody would be able to provide service for that, right?
See, I was talking to Diego about this a few days ago, and I'm sure there are companies out there where if you sent them the phone, they could retrofit it with modern electronics. But that's the problem, is the network coverage. But there's got to be a way to do it.
Because some of these, I can't quite make out the brand on this one, but on the car that I had, I believe it was either AT&T or Verizon that was like stamped on the phone. So like it had the manufacturer logo on the phone, but then it also had like a provider or something like on the phone.
I heard that if you talk on the phone in this car, you're exempt from current laws.
Really?
No, I'm kidding.
Oh, okay. that would be kind of funny. What was obviously back in the day, you would have been allowed to talk on this. Now in the days of hand-free phones, what's the line if you drive a car like this that has the phone built in? Because you're not like,
I'm not holding my phone; it's on my shoulder.
Oh, officer, my cell phone's in my.
No, remember the ones with like the, it's like a sack that you can carry around your shoulder, and so it's like you have a bag, and the phone is attached to that, the receiver.
Oh yeah, well, and then they also, I think the 80s or 90s, they had these like hard, kind of wireframe. Yeah, like so you put the phone there, and like I saw it in a movie.
I can see like physical therapists having a field day with that.
Yeah, it's true.
See, I would just tell him, like, officer, my cell phone's in my pocket. This is my car phone.
Yeah.
This is part of the car.
Well, you got me there, sir. Move on. There's got to be a way to retrofit those. I mean, I was thinking, there might be a company where they take the guts from an existing like modern phone that can get coverage, and maybe they can graft it in there.
Yeah, but after our discussion now, it seems like there's really no point. The amount of effort you'd be going through to have something that you wouldn't be able to use anyways.
It would be a cool bauble at best.
I would not be surprised if that holster has something connected to the radio where maybe you could have hands free. I don't know. I mean, it seems it seems like a concept that didn't come till later, but from a technological point of view, I imagine it could have been available. Doesn't
It would make
seem like
sense.
that big of a deal, but I don't know.
Actually, I guess, is there a speakerphone option on the phone?
There should be, yeah.
Or you could just leave it in the center console there and maybe use it without...
Shout down
Yeah.
occasionally.
Stop it! I'm driving.
Oh, wait, hold on. I'm crashing now.
Yeah. Oh, hold on. I gotta switch to OnStar. Oh, man. There's the V12.
Oh, yeah.
So good. All right. So this is a 1980 Mercedes 280 SL, but specifically it's a Euro car. So I have a dire affinity for R107 Mercedes. And this one I thought was worth pointing out just because of the bumpers. I think the bumpers on the R107s or the American cars are really bad. But the Euro cars fixed that problem. Now we have a much slimmer, nicer, cleaner looking bumper that does a better job of giving a beautiful style. One of the other things with the Euro cars, this one's an automatic, but Euro cars were the ones that had manual transmissions that you could get. The American cars were never sold with manual transmissions, unfortunately. This car was actually a gray market car, so it would have been purchased new in 1980 from Germany and then imported to the US where it was then sold. And then this particular car is kind of finished in a gold with a kind of brown interior with some cool, I don't even know what to call that. I guess just kind of quilted pattern.
Houndstooth. I don't know.
No, that's not houndstooth.
Gingham?
It's like gingham type of plaid. I mean, I love the gauges in these too. Very
Classic.
yes, I love these cars.
I will say that the driving lights, fog lights, whatever you want to call that, I don't think they're helping the car for me.
From a look like perspective,
From a looks perspective.
some of that looks like it may have been stuff added to legalize the car.
Now, did the European cars have the parking lights underneath the bumper? Because like the American ones did too, right?
Oh gosh, I don't know off the top of my head, but I do know that part of the argument for getting rid of the gray market was that when the cars were being brought into the U.S., the people, like the standards that the cars were being retrofitted to meet all of the U.S. regulations was considered rather lackluster. Was part of the argument, aside from losing a ton of money to people that were making money. So for those of you that don't know, the gray market was essentially people could go directly to the manufacturers in Europe, purchase the car, bring it to the US, and there was such a huge margin between what the car was for sale in Europe because of how strong the dollar was, essentially, that you could buy a car in the US was considerably more expensive, tens of thousands of dollars more expensive than the European version. So the cost of actually just importing the car to the US after you bought it was significantly cheaper. Or if you were a dealer, you could then make money in that little threshold between how much you could buy the car in Europe for then how much you could sell it for in the US. So that's kind of where the gray market came from and why it got stopped, because I believe Mercedes was quoted somewhere as losing hundreds of millions of dollars to gray market imports. Mercedes just by themselves. And obviously when they finally passed the laws, there were other manufacturers involved in that.
Was the 280 ever sold in the U.S.?
Oh gosh. Okay, this is the tough part, because when you look at the R107, there's a bajillion marks all the way up to 560 that were sold, because we got some versions of some cars, then there were similar numbers that were available in different body styles that we got like one version of, but not the other. Like I think the 500, maybe that wasn't sold here. That one's tough to keep track of. I couldn't tell you off the top of my head. Yeah, this is my pick just because R107s are great, and a Euro bumper car is definitely a win.
Well, Jeff, this is an Arizona car, so I think you should get this one.
Personally, I think I'm not ready to buy a car like this. I will have one at some point, mostly because these are hardtop convertibles in typical SL fashion. So they come with a hardtop, or in this photo, it has the soft top up. That would always be with you. This is a very nice example.
And you don't You don't see a lot of them with the bunt wheels in chrome.
Yeah, normally they're just the regular metal silver finish.
Yeah.
What about the chrome wheel arches?
Yeah, that's a little bit more unusual as well.
Accessory, maybe.
Or maybe an option. Could have been indifferent for Euro cars. That I don't know. I don't know all of the different options.
To
But
me, it looks very American, like very flashy.
yeah, but looking at the way it's set up and how it looks like it's sitting under the trim, that would have been a considerable amount of effort to do that to the car. You know,
It works.
most people that put on the aftermarket chrome stuff, it's normally like just some adhesive and sticking it on there. I don't know. I like this car. I think the colors, having the gold with the brown interior and then the sort of textured center inline for the seats, I think it just looks fantastic. Really cool car. 280. Obviously, this is going to be a 6-cylinder. You're looking at about 185 horse for this one. 104,000 miles. Cool cars. I love the R107. They just strike me as like the daily driver. You're at the coffee shop hanging out for a bit and you just cruise around the town in this car.
Yeah, my wife's late great aunt, she had an R107, and I think she got it new and she drove it until like the thing drove it into the ground. And people where she lived in Florida, they knew her for her car. I mean, that was a part of her identity.
They're cool cars, especially in an age where people weren't necessarily keeping them all. But I mean, even if you buy the V8 versions, they're not performance cars, despite the fact that Mercedes actually entered them in a rally and won with automatics of all things. They entered some like 560s and even some other 500s into some rallies and somehow survived. These cars have like swing arm axles and stuff like that in the rear, so they're not performance cars at all. I've heard that if you have a 560, which is the big 5.6 V8, and you get on the gas, those cars will squat and then take off. With just kind of the way that they're loaded, kind of soft, floaty. They're obviously more touring cars. They're meant to be. They're not performance cars per se.
Yeah, it takes off like a freaking powerboat.
Yeah. But that's my pick. But I wanted to quickly highlight a car that is going to be coming soon onto AutoHunter.com. So this is a 2017 Chevrolet Corvette Grand Sport. And so this car will actually be going live on Friday, which is going to be June 16th and will be ending June 23rd, which is during the upcoming Barrett-Jackson auction in Las Vegas. So keep a lookout if you're interested in this car. This car has just 50 miles on the odometer, which I believe could potentially make this one of the lowest mileage Grand Sports in existence. I think I may have seen the odometer the other day. I think it was 52 miles, maybe to be exact.
That's the last I heard. Yeah, it's 52.
Yeah, so 52 miles. I think this must be one of the lowest Grand Sport mileages in existence, because that to me what I picture in my head is, I know that in Bowling Green they drive the cars once they get out of the assembly, they drive them somewhere else to get them ready for shipping and stuff like that. So I picture in my head the total mileage on the car is potentially that few miles of driving to get it somewhere to get shipped away from Bowling Green, then maybe some driving at the dealership, and then maybe driving it home from the dealership. And I can't imagine it's really been driven much at all since then. And so that car is now going to be up for auction here. It'll be on AutoHunter.com, like I said, for 7 days, starting this upcoming Friday, June 16th, and will be ending June 23rd. And it's going to be in person as well at the Barrett-Jackson auction. So if you want to check out the car yourself, it'll be there when the auction starts on Thursday. And then, of course, the auction ends on Friday. So if you want to check it out, don't take too long. Fairly loaded car, LT1 V8, just cool car that I figured I would highlight as far as the upcoming auction.
Yeah, and speaking of that, you will be there in person as well, so
yes,
everybody can find you there.
Yes, we will be making videos for the content and have people at a booth as well for the event. So pretty cool highlight. But with that, that's going to be the end of today's video. So that's our highlight. Obviously, all the cars that we just showed you are on AutoHunter.com. So if you're interested in buying or selling your collector car, be sure to check out AutoHunter.com, our online auction, which is driven by ClassicCars.com, which is our online marketplace, which has over 30,000 cars currently live on the site as well. So with that, that's going to be the end of the video. Thank you so much for joining me, as always, guys. And if you guys enjoyed the video, could hit that like button for us. We'd really appreciate it. And consider getting subscribed for more content like this in the future. Thank you so much for watching.